The US loves to paint China as a villain. We want there to be the good guys and the bad guys, and we want to be the good guys. And that's just like not giving us the full picture of what's happening these days.
I traveled to China to meet Paul Ashton, an American who's lived there for 8 years. He's a content creator and entrepreneur who became globally famous for the city not city meme. Paul shared why he chose Shanghai instead of moving back to America, whether Chinese people are kind to foreigners, and how living in China drastically changed his view of the US. I'm Max Chernov, your insider to Expat Life. Topa.
Do you think like the mindset-wise, Americans, and I'm generalizing, but like Americans and Chinese are kind of similar or like super far away, somewhere in the middle?
I mean, I think that there are some really big cultural differences between the way that we think and act in the US and the way that people think and act here. Some of that has to do with culture, some of it has to do with just like education trends and education styles. Some of it has to do with like, just like very differences in, big differences in environment too.
Like
one of the things that the US is very like, we're very strong independence. I think like one of the things that we've gotten maybe a little too far down the road of is like we really have told everybody in the US that their opinion and their like point of view and their lifestyle is like the center of their universe. Yeah. And I think that in some ways can be really empowering and really good. And in other ways, I think it like prevents us from being willing to see other people's side or just occasionally like stepping back and saying like, you know what, this isn't the most important thing for us to do right now. Like my worldview maybe isn't the most important part of this particular setting or this particular relationship. I think Chinese people in general, I think a lot of them are much more kind of like individual focused versus more community focused, right? And I think that does stand up in some ways. In the sense that I think in China there's a lot more people that are willing to kind of figure out what we have in common and what makes sense for us to kind of connect on in the environment that we're in and potentially avoid inflammatory discussions or like more conflict-oriented discussions in a way that like can be really healthy and really gratifying sometimes.
Your Chinese level is pretty high, I guess, yeah?
So yes, you speak pretty fluently, high. Yeah? Yes,
How people react when just random people on the street when you start speaking Chinese?
I mean, there's kind of like this running joke about your kind of like initial conversation with 90% of Chinese people is just going to be complimenting your Chinese level no matter how much you've just said. So it's kind of hard to get like a real grasp sometimes because oftentimes I think it's a kind of like it's like a politeness ritual, right?
Ni hao, and they're happy already.
And it's like, I used to have a stand-up joke that it was like, the phrase you learn in Chinese class, like the initial dialogue is like, ni hao ma, 我还好,你呢, 我也好. Like, how are you? Like, hello, how are you? I'm fine, thanks, and you? I'm fine, right? And the actual dialogue oftentimes is, ni hao, and then, wow, your Chinese is amazing. And then you say, how are you? And the person says, your Chinese is exactly like a Chinese person. So I think, typically speaking, it's really weird because there's like two realities. Like one is that I'm getting complimented for the stuff that I learned on the first day of Chinese class. And then people actually give me feedback on my Chinese maybe like when they start to realize that I'm actually communicating in a more like natural and like approachable way. And then I start to get like genuine compliments and like surprise. And I think the most gratifying moments there are when people are like, this is like my first real conversation with a foreigner, Nice. And that's really amazing because it's like, I'm getting an impression to like connect. I'm like getting an opportunity to like connect culturally with somebody that is, like just I'm getting to be that bridge that I've always wanted to be, And then there's this other thing that happens where I've been doing Chinese social media for like a year and a half now, and people will tell me that they didn't think I could speak Chinese. And I'm like, I mean, like the City Boo City thing was definitely like a minimal amount of Chinese, but I was always like, I feel like there was enough for you to know that I could at least hold a conversation. So some people are like, wow, your Chinese is so much better than I thought it would be. I'm like,
thank you.
It's a very like large range. I think there's this one guy on YouTube that is like, everybody brings him up all the time. He's that guy in the US that like goes into Chinese restaurants and films people's reactions of him speaking Chinese.
Oh yeah. He's big.
Hate that.
He has 10 million views. He has super
super well known.
Yeah,
Everybody, so many people have brought him up to me before, and I'm like, what you guys don't realize is that you don't have to speak Chinese well to get that kind of reaction from Chinese people. So I mean, I think it's more fun occasionally when Shanghai, honestly, there's enough people here that speak Chinese well that you don't oftentimes get the same level of reaction that you would if you're elsewhere and somebody speaks Chinese, and then you suddenly like, maybe they're like, you're in Europe or something, and there's like Chinese tourists and they're trying to figure something out, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can help if you want, and then that's a very gratifying shock response, because they are not really expecting to see that outside of China. Something that happened really funny recently that's like only slightly related, but it's just so funny was my sister and I were in Beijing, and the elevator door opens, and this little kid, you know, usually like if you're in China, like people be like, oh my god, like some kids especially would be like, wow, 外国人, like, oh my gosh, a foreigner, right? And the door opens up, and the kid goes, wow, Japanese. His mom or his parent was like, oh no, foreigner, not Japanese.
You were like learning the language, being in the US, and then you came to China, and it was like what you expected? It was like something very different? Or?
I think, like on one end, I did have an expectation because I'd studied abroad here before. The first time I came, I had very little expectation, and I was just like, was blown away by like the food, the hospitality of the people, the friendliness of Chinese people, the enthusiasm of like, you know, you speak Chinese to people and people are like really excited to communicate you. I'd studied German in high school, and like, German people are lovely, but ultimately like so many German people speak English that it just didn't feel nearly as useful. Whereas here it was like, oh my gosh, not only am I learning a language that I'm really passionate about, am I like getting to meet people, I also like, people really value this skill set and I can actually use it, which is really cool too. But I just loved it. I thought it was such an interesting place to be. It was so much like culturally just like really invigorating. And then I had visited Shanghai during my study abroad in Beijing. So when I came to Shanghai to live, I had sort of an idea of what to expect, and I kind of was strategic about choosing Shanghai as I felt like Shanghai felt a little bit more, it's international, so there's you can kind of find your little enclave. You know, you can be in China and be a part of the culture and like really like engage, but there's also a significant expat population. So I thought like if I was looking long term, that I'd probably be more suitable in Shanghai than I would in Beijing.
My experience with Shanghai was like 11 years ago, just for one day, like very briefly. Like I came yesterday, I was like, wow, shit, that's a big city. And it's actually like, because I'm originally I lived in Russia, in Moscow. It actually reminds me of Moscow. Like,
oh, really? Interesting.
Like, huge cities, like wide roads, people dressed up, people like everywhere. So it's kind of cool. It's like a real city. You know? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you know, China grows like, has grown so fast. And even people in Shanghai, like I have friends that have been here for 20 years or so, and they have seen so much change that's taken place here and how fast, like in Shanghai, you'll leave for 2 months and you'll come back and you'll feel like you're in a completely different city sometimes. Or not that extreme anymore, but like, you know, you might be like, oh, there was nothing in that road before, and suddenly you've got like 3 new restaurants that have opened, right? Or maybe a bar that you knew closed down and is now something completely different, right? But that's like, you also see because of that the rapidity of the change, I feel like China, you'll see very different types of cities, some of which are a little bit like, that have kind of very well-rounded development, and some that are like very developed in certain areas, and then other areas you'll find to be like a little bit less of like a modern experience. But all of them change so quickly, you know?
And Shanghai,
I feel like the city center is very like, very highly, it is kind of what you would expect from like a global city, right? But then as soon as you like start hitting the outskirts, you start to realize, oh, wow, this is really where we're starting to see a lot of like distance between places, or it's much more residentially focused. There's not as much like, you know, like maybe like lifestyle stuff that you would see in like Brooklyn if you were in New York City, or Bushwick or something like that.
According to the World Economic Forum, AI was one of the most in-demand skills in 2025. Yet most of us didn't learn it. But don't rush to fear that robots will replace you. Let me tell you about the 2-day live AI mastermind training by Outskill, the world's first AI-focused educational platform, happening this Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. EST on both days. They're running a year-end holiday offer right now, so you can join completely free instead of the usual $395. Outskill is rated 4.9 out of 5 on Trustpilot, and this 16-hour live experience has been taken by 10 million worldwide professionals, mentored directly by AI experts from companies like Microsoft and Nvidia. This training isn't just about learning tools, it's about changing the way you work. You learn how to use AI to simplify your daily tasks, build AI agents that plan, create, and automate your workflows, gain ready-to-use AI systems, design AI automations that connect tools. Of course, knowing how to use AI isn't enough. You need to know how to monetize it. And Outskill learners are already doing it. Many have built AI-powered businesses, earning $4,000 to $5,000 a week. To help you do the same, everyone who attends both days gets $5,000 worth of bonuses, including their prompt Bible, the AI monetization roadmap, and personalized AI toolkit. Seats are limited, so grab your now via the link in description and join the community WhatsApp group to stay updated.
Some people say like, oh, like you have all the CCTV around the city, around in China, or you're watched like constantly. For me, it's fine. I mean, I think if I'm in a public space, I kind of have to behave, I guess.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you feel like suppressed? Do you feel restricted living in China?
No, not really. I mean, like, actually, there was something interesting that I read at one point in time that, like, the most surveilled, like the place with the most surveillance globally was, like, a lot of people would have expected it to be China, but it was actually the UK.
London.
Yeah, London.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, honestly, like, to be fair.
But it doesn't help them.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a lot of data. It's a lot of data. And so it's like, I think that ultimately, like, you can collect as much data as you want, but it only ever becomes an issue if it's really an issue. If something happens, they can look it up and they can find the data, but there's not somebody that's like watching you 24/7, you know? At least as far as I assume that there's not somebody watching, because the number of people that would require to do and everything else, it's like most people are doing their job the same way we all do our jobs. Sometimes you work hard and sometimes you do everything you can not to work hard, you know? Like nowadays, everywhere that you live, you're going to run into periods of time where you are frightened by realities that exist that may or may not actually impact you, right? Currently, I'm okay with facing those in China. I love my life here. There are so many amazing benefits to living here. I love the convenience. I love the design of the city. I love the food. I love the people. I love the cultural exchange. I think there's also something really exciting about being somewhere that in this time period of the world is like super important globally. Like what China does and what happens in places like Shanghai and Beijing and Shenzhen and Guangzhou are like actively shaping the future of the world, you know? And I'm seeing it from a perspective that a lot of people don't get, which is of somebody that has experience here and can speak the language and has a certain level of cultural literacy, you know? So I think all of those benefits outweigh any level, at least at this point in time, of concern or any sense of like of danger, you know? And to be fair as well, like when I'm comparing that to the US, where the danger is oftentimes much more aligned with like violence and guns and like crime, I feel very safe here, you know? Like I don't worry about somebody attacking me in China, you know? So yeah, I wouldn't say that I don't feel a sense of fear or anxiety that I feel is, I think it's something that I would experience anywhere. Some of it, because it's sometimes globally linked, sometimes it's more localized, but I think that those types of things, those feelings of like uncertainty or unfamiliarity or worry, they're going to happen wherever you live, depending on that area, but also like the state of the world, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I love it. Like it's a Shanghai thing.
Yes.
Like so many characters on the streets. I love it. Yeah,
It's nice. It's a great, yeah. I love Shanghai.
Because in Shenzhen, Guangzhou, it's different. It's more like business oriented.
Yeah,
But
sure.
Shanghai, I think it's business oriented plus like culture, art, and all stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yesterday night, I had a walk around like 11 p.m. Like some drunk people on the street, but you don't feel like aggressiveness in the air.
No.
You know what I mean?
I think that kind of, when it comes to like Americans, there's sometimes like that same sort of mentality sometimes I think encourages people to like get involved in other people's business.
Yeah.
In a way that like my experience with a lot of Chinese people is that you're doing your thing, you do your thing, as long as it's not like in my like nuclear family, or if it's not potentially, it's not like destructive or harmful to me, then, you know, I will just, you know, like you do it. I'm focused on me right now, you know? And I think you can even see that like one of the big cultural differences people mention oftentimes is like the older generation in China tends to be a little bit like pushier when it comes to like the subway, or like when it's like getting in line, you know, there's a little bit more like assertiveness, or kind of like, I'm just focused on me right now.
Yeah.
And as an American, like we would see that as kind of like a direct attack on our on respect or dignity, you know, But for Chinese people, it's oftentimes just like, you have the same right to do the same thing. I don't mean anything by it, but you know, like we're just all trying to get what we want at the time that we need it, you know? And so a lot of people would just be like, okay, you know, like I could have done that too if I wanted to, but I just didn't, and they're just doing their thing. So, you know, we'll just let it slide and continue on with our lives.
Yeah, actually someone explained me why it's like that with some older people, because they still remember, like, especially people in their 60s, 70s, they still remember the basically hunger, so lack of food. So that's why they always feel this like FOMO, like they need to be quick.
100%. Yeah. It's like you know, like I think it's hard for us as Americans to understand, at least for Americans. You know, like I've said before, like I feel like the people, like what's happened in 100 years in China maybe happened over like 200 years in the US, where it's like you're talking like generations that exist today. We're living in a time period that we're existing in like a lifestyle and a culture and like an environment that is much more culturally distant time-wise from any level of our generation in the US, you know? And so like, it's important to kind of like contextualize that when you're dealing with people, and also recognize like so many of those people, like you might get pushed, and then like the next moment, if you strike up a conversation with you, that person is gonna just be like super helpful. They're gonna help you buy a ticket. They're gonna be super generous. Hey, hello, ni hao.
Every day.
Yeah, it depends. We're walking and stuff.
When people approach you, they normally what? They ask for a selfie. They say hi. What?
Usually I get like is that the City Boo City guy? Oh, let's have a selfie. And then that's it. Which is fine with me. I love that type of stuff, so.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Since this viral moment in 2024, you kind of stopped doing what you did before, and then focused on social media?
Yeah, so I had my own company, and I basically had incorporated a lot of freelance I was doing into, I was kind of like entertainment focused, and also like kind of like event organization, event design, as far as entertainment related stuff, some travel related work and consulting. And then also did a good amount of like business trainings as they related to like leadership and kind of like performance acumen. It was a lot of like, there would be periods of time that were really good, and then there'd be slow points, and it was kind of this like considerable like up and down. And that year, I was starting to kind of invest more time into social media to just add like another track to the overall landscape. And then when that one kind of blew up, I was like, all right, well, it doesn't really make sense for me to invest as much time in these other channels and make things happen. I can kind of just cut back and focus exclusively on this one for a while. Which was great, considering would have been much harder if I had to balance that with other stuff.
Nina? Shanghai city 不 city 啊？
好 city 啊，
北京还是上海更 city 的呢？
北京是 super city 啊。
For those who don't know this meme, city not city, can you explain what's that?
Yeah, sure.
Throughout my YouTube journey, I met so many interesting people, like billionaires, politicians, celebrities. With some, we even became friends, some became my clients. And what's funny, I started all of this in Singapore from scratch. I didn't know anyone, my English was not perfect, still not. I didn't have any like a fancy MBA degree or something. But step by step, I managed to reach out to people, get them interested, and build real connections just by talking to them. I really believe that people around you shape your life more than anything, and good conversational skills make everything much easier. So here's what I want to do. I'm putting together a small group and bring everyone to Phuket, where we will spend a super productive and fun weekend, probably around February or March. We will work on your social and leadership skills, networking, personal brands, and you will make friends with great people. I even arranged a couple of hours with a billionaire I interviewed before. I'm sure this little getaway can boost your life, business and career, and of course we'll have a lot of fun together too. If you want to join us, get on the waiting list and answer a few quick questions so I can shape the program properly. So scan this QR code on the screen or click the link below. See you in Phuket soon. When I was preparing for this chat, I was like researching the meme. So this meme is like a local meme for China, or it went outside of China as well?
I mean, it is largely China, but then, you know, like China and Chinese are like, I would say it's like a Chinese language meme, because it did exist in like Malaysia, in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, and like basically anywhere that there was like a large collection of Chinese speakers, and then also for like Sinophiles that existed all over the world, people that had studied Chinese in the past or lived in China or had an interest in China, or maybe were like first or second generation abroad. So it was really like, I had done videos in the past where I kind of played this character where I was just like selfieing and talking about how like, basically I was just like riding off the vibes of like the happiness that Shanghai gives me. And I was talking about like, oh, it's just like, it's so lovely to like live in the city, and like it's so city here, and like just like basically like talking drivel, just like being silly, and like I said how city and the data was like for the video was okay, and then I did another one on the Bunt, but neither of them blew up. It was just me by myself, and they were okay, but it wasn't astounding. And then I had a friend that does social media here. He invited me to do a video with him, and he wrote a script, and in the script he had Hao Sitia in the script. And I was thinking about filming another one using the phrase, but I had not made any concrete plans. But he was like, you know, I think you should, his suggestion was like, I think you should turn this into your slogan, because it's got like a real ring to it. It's very fun. And my sister was coming to town to visit that day. And I basically did it with her, and we kind of did it in this way that was like very goofy, very short, but also had this sort of like addictive rhythm to it, which is, I think, always like a Chinese social media really loves like a phrase or like a like format that has a kind of like slightly off kilter, sort of like unreal quality to it, or like doesn't 100% make sense. And I think that it just so happened that it hit like a couple of notes at the same time. City walk had already been like a big phrase within Chinese social media. City walk. So like to go on a city walk is basically there would be these different like maps of like, here's our like Saturday city walk for Chengdu, and it'd be like you take a photo here and you have a coffee here and then you get dinner here, and just basically you like weave your way through the city, and like so like that word was kind of already like in the zeitgeist of Chinese social media. And then at that point in time there was a lot of investment and like promotion of China travel, and so there was kind of like a hashtag that was already trending, and I think that was probably heavily pushed from the official side. There was probably a lot of investment into like foreigners coming to China and doing China travel, and so a lot of people thought I was a tourist initially. Well, my sister was, I was not. And so we kind of also, I think, got a boost from that already kind of being happening as well. And then we were, you know, traveling all over China and doing it in different places, and so we kind of had this like, we were sort of like, we kind of got lumped into that, and then it started being copied by other people. And you know, for me, like the phrase was just supposed to be like it was just like kind of like a silly thing. It did like express kind of like the excitement and happiness that I get from living in Shanghai, and I love cities in general. So like when I travel, I love going to metropolitan areas and getting a feel for what the city is like. But you know, I was never really expecting it to become this like big topic of conversation of like what really is city. Like it wasn't supposed to be like anything like that, you know.
Yeah. What's the right way to say your meme? Can you show me?
So the classic format is I would say meme, and then my little sister would pop up behind me and she goes, ah. Right, so she responds, and then I say something, city bu city ah, which basically is like, is this thing city or not city?
Yeah.
And before we used to actually say if it was city or not city. Now we just always say it's city. And then she goes, city ah. And then I say, 对，就是很 city 的. Right, which is like basically like, yep, that's city. And then we say together, 好 city ah ah, which is basically like, it's so city.
So funny, man. Like, somehow it's very addictive. I don't know why.
I don't either.
I watched it many times, but it's like, I don't know, it's cool to watch and like you want to rewatch. For some reason, I don't know, there's some magic around it.
There's some sort of like brain hack that we locked into that I don't know how it happened. I would love to know, because if I could just do that for the rest of my life, I would be set. But like, I mean, it's like I've shown it to like people like when I'll tell people about like what happened and like what, and they'll be like, oh, I want to see the video, and I show it to them. They can't understand it, and they laugh though. They like have a reaction that's like, oh, I love it. You know? So there is something about it. I don't know what we figured out, but yeah, it's crazy.
How you monetize this virality that happened to you?
My company focuses on mostly is basically people buy ad space from your from your account. So basically you make a custom video for them, or you add a product into your video and they will pay you for doing that.
Okay. On Douyin or other platforms as well?
Douyin, Xiaohongshu, Rednote.
All three.
You can actually, honestly, people will invest in a number of different platforms. Sometimes the ones that I'm on in China are Kuaishou, which is was Douyin's largest competitor. Now it's more Rednote. Then Douyin, Rednote, Shipinghao, which is WeChat's channel, and then Bilibili. So basically all of those, each of those will get ad requests, but the majority of them come through Douyin, or want Douyin, or Rednote. Those are kind of the two that are the biggest. And those are also where my largest followings are. So
what kind of money is that? For example, for 1 million video on Douyin, like how much you can charge for like insert inside the video?
So my current rate for a roughly 60-second video on Douyin and Rednote is 80,000 renminbi.
Which is in the US?
USD roughly 11,000. Yeah. So it is quite a lucrative industry. Now, I'm not usually, that rate depends on the agency that you work with. It depends on, I've signed with an MCN, which is basically like a talent agency. And what they do is they help me not only arrange and coordinate the business side of things, they also do negotiation, etc. They help organization and like kind of the admin related stuff, legal elements, contracts, etc. And so essentially they take a cut of that. The platform usually takes a cut of that. And then usually there's another agency that's between the client and my agency that helps with the kind of client's social media marketing, etc. And they oftentimes take a cut as well. So what I typically net is somewhere around like 30,000 to 40,000 renminbi, which is like about
40%.
Depending on the agreement with the agency, usually about about 50%.
About 50%.
Yeah, between 40 and 50% I will usually net after everything's said and done.
Hey guys, just a quick announcement, don't skip. I'll be running a 3-day workshop called Fast Track to Views and Profits on YouTube. If you ever wanted to start your own channel, this is the best way to do it. You will learn how to choose the most profitable niche and how to beat the YouTube algorithm. You're gonna love it, I promise. Link in description, so sign up if it's for you. And now back to the video.
I don't know if you can compare, but for example, Chinese in their 20s, like would they be different from Americans in their 20s? And like, what kind of people they are, like, what they like, what are they about, if you ever thought about it?
I think that like, the whole thing that like kind of defines a generation is sort of like the kind of like environment that they grow up in, right? And I think, you know, the problems that like the average US citizen faces and are kind of like people that are coming to age right now and sort of like young adults in the US, what they're kind of like dealing with and what young adults in China are dealing with, I think are very different. And so I think that that's gonna probably shape a lot of the perspective. But I do think that there's like, what I think like does, what there is a little, like one of the similarities I do think exists between those. I think that like we grew up in an era in which we were told to like care about everything and try to solve every problem that existed. And I'm not sure if that necessarily is as much the same for Chinese people in my demographic here. I think like Americans specifically were given like a very much like this kind of like savior complex, like we have to go and fix the world's problems and you can do anything and believe in yourself, you know, like
it's very American.
Yes, it's very American, right? Because we were also, I think like we had this kind of like really strong idealism about like what the internet would create and how it would solve problems and our interconnectedness and our global, like we were kind of like growing up with this like the world is going to be this like beautiful, perfect place in the future, you know? And I think Gen Z has kind of like seen what that's become in the US and have become like a lot less like, they're a lot more disillusioned, I think, or a lot more realistic in some ways, where they're like, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do, this is what I care a lot about, but this is also like, I feel like they're a little bit more like abstract and a little more surreal. And I think China's like younger generation is also similar in that way. Like they're a little bit more like balanced about what they can achieve, what the world looks like, what is possible, and like how to kind of like find a balance when there's a lot of really unrealistic expectations and a lot of exposure to problems that maybe like we can't solve as individuals, you know? We have like so much information at our fingertips now. I feel like the younger generations are a little bit more along the lines of like, okay, like there's a lot happening out here and it's not like all my fault, you know, like, but I don't know. I mean, like that's a very like, I wouldn't say I'm like super in touch with that demographic all the time. I think,
Do you also do stand-up comedy shows?
I used to do more. Nowadays, I don't have as many opportunities to do it. If you're going to do performance in China, there's a lot of like, you have to do a lot of licensing, and you also have to be kind of linked to a specific, like your visa is supposed to be linked to whatever organization you're doing the comedy with. So I'm still able to do improv is kind of like one of my favorite hobbies, improv comedy. So that I will still do, but then sometimes some hosting stuff, sometimes hosting live streams, and then most of the time if I'm doing my stand-up more is just like trying to write funny stuff for social media nowadays.
Do you have to like approve your jokes if you go to the stage?
You have to basically submit your script to the Culture Bureau. So they will do a run through and they'll check to make sure there's nothing that they don't want to be published or spoken about on stage.
So what kind of jokes would not work? Like about CCP?
You can't. Politics is definitely a no-no. I mean, honestly, I think like of late there's been a lot more. There's been a lot of additional restrictions, and I think that also there's a lot of gray areas, and I think that's partially from the government side trying to make sure that, you know, if you keep things a little bit less clear, I think it also it drives people to self-censor a bit more as well. But a lot of it has to do with like, I mean, the big things for them, like this, my understanding from my limited understanding of the government perspective is very much along the lines of like, how can we minimize social unrest or like how can we like keep the peace as much as possible? So for them, oftentimes it's like, what content do we need to keep from being said on stage to maintain a sense of order and a sense of like calm? Yeah.
Does it bother you as an American?
I mean, it's a very different. I recognize that I'm a guest here.
Yeah.
My personal perspective is that I think that there are ways in which the government could achieve their goals that don't alienate or oppress people as much. I think some of the ways in which they exercise control are maybe a bit short-sighted. But then I'm also a guest here, so I have to respect that it's not my job to be an activist here, because that's not the way Chinese people deal with things. I am not a Chinese person, and I am not in the US. So most of the time I kind of focus on sharing what I like about China to the rest of the world and doing it in ways that are playful and respect kind of my values. And I think that ultimately, like, my hope is that I can offer more varied perspectives on a relatively like one-dimensional media landscape when it comes to China. You don't get a lot of information about China that focuses on anything more than the economy and the government, or some like freak incident that happened, or some way to kind of like paint China as the villain. The US loves to paint China as a villain. We love our Disney stories. We want there to be the good guys and the bad guys, and we want to be the good guys. And that's just like not giving us the full picture of what's happening these days, know? And so I hope that like people can recognize more about like what Chinese people have to offer, what Chinese culture has to offer, what Chinese history has to offer, And so I think that I don't know if I'm always going to be satisfied just doing that. There might be a day where especially with the way the US is now, there's some things I would like to talk about more that's happening in the US that wouldn't maybe necessarily be super relevant for my Chinese fan base. But at the moment, my goal is more along the lines of like focusing on the stuff that is really good that I don't think people recognize in China or get a chance to see.
Yeah. Do you get accused being paid by CCP? Sometimes people in the comments, like on my videos, say like, "Oh yeah, how much you must
be paid." I mean, like, honestly, maybe because my content is so stupid, I don't get those accusations. They're like, "There's no way they paid this guy to do that." I've had a couple people kind of like be suspicious, or I mean, like, to be fair, tourism boards have paid me to go and promote their area.
How much control they want over the footage, the video, the final product?
I mean, it depends on the product, it depends on how much they're paying, and I guess it depends a little bit on how much I care about what I'm delivering. Sometimes the client is willing to pay a lot of money and they're just not gonna budge on anything, and it's like, okay, like, we're gonna let you know that this probably isn't gonna do so well, Typically speaking, I'm happy to like report on or talk about experiences or like discuss benefits of like a certain product or a certain experience, but I won't say something that I don't have knowledge of, or something that I like don't like explicitly don't agree with. I won't say, And so sometimes we'll have discussions with a client in that regard. There have been some times where somebody wants you to take a little bit more of like a national perspective on something, or say something that's a little bit more like, like kind of hoping to get sort of like a political reaction or something. But typically speaking, like, our policy is kind of like we don't engage in those discussions. Like those are like we're allowed to like step back from political side of things. And so we usually will if that ever comes up. But honestly, there's not many instances in which that's happened.
Do people from the US, like your friends from the US, ask you like, why are you in China? Why are you here? Like, what's the attitude towards China from your friends, and why you're here?
Well, some of them would be like, "Oh, how's Japan?" Or like, "Wow, Singapore must be incredible." So there's a little bit of that, and then there's some people that are genuinely like, "I have no idea why you would want to go there." But I think that part of the beauty of social media is now that people can see my life here and the cool things that I do and how I live. I think a lot of that perspective has changed, especially since I got here. I think like when I first moved here, there was a lot more of like, why would you do that? Why would you go there, etc. And now it's more along the lines of like people are kind of more on board. They sort of see what's going on and they're starting to get like a more like robust perspective on what China is and what it has to offer. I think things have changed in that regard, but it depends. I mean, honestly, to be fair, during COVID, I was here for the full 3 years. And so I think a lot of my US friendships are not quite as strong as they were before. So some of them still follow along, but I don't talk with them quite as frequently as I used to. So
Yeah. Do you go to the US sometimes?
I'm usually there 2 times a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, once Christmas is usually, I'll go back for Christmas to spend time with the family. And then usually in the summertime, I'll go back once for like a family trip as well.
Yeah. What's your thoughts and feelings about the US when you're there?
You know, I think there was like a really big shift for me when I was here for COVID and I didn't leave China for 3 years. And so I think that at that point in time, I really kind of dug in to my life here and started focusing on kind of like, it was even like a shift in my community. Like a lot before that, there were a lot of like, kind of like long-term expats. I kind of started shifting more towards friends with people that were Chinese that were living here and planned to stay here. And so now after I went back, things kind of did shift significantly, like after COVID, where there was definitely like a change politically, there was a change economically. And so I think since then, I don't feel quite as home in the US as I used to. There's some things that I'm super comfortable with here that I don't think I'd access in the US. Public transport is one of them. Convenience of food and the lifestyle costs are relatively low compared to like larger cities in the US. So I think thinking about going back, I still like love a lot of things about the US and there's some really great things going on there. But yeah, I haven't thought about like going back is still like a big, whether or not to like actually move back and live there is still like a hard thing to, it's like a hard thing to wrap my head around right now.
Yeah. Living in China for 8 years and like doing social media business here, what do you start to understand about you being from the US or you being American or about your country after living abroad?
I think you get a much better perspective. People in the US don't like to think that we're brainwashed at all. And generally speaking, like I would say that in the US, our government doesn't put a lot of time into like putting out information that like people are supposed to take a certain way, or at least they used. I guess now more and more there is some stuff like that happening. But I think that one of the things that the nationalism that like Americans have, I feel tends to be a little bit more like this is the best place to live. There's nowhere that could compare, you know. And I think that just puts an immediate blind spot on the reality that like if you have not lived anywhere else, you really don't know, you know. And so I think that living in China has given me a perspective on certain styles of life that are literally not even possible in the US. Like when it comes to living in a city where you don't have to have a car, you know. We only have probably 2 or 3 cities in which that's manageable, you know. And having really up-to-date subway systems and train networks and even like infrastructure, like having up-to-date infrastructure. The US doesn't do a great job of updating its infrastructure a lot of times because it's expensive and we already have stuff that like sort of works, right? I think it's really important to like recognize and adapt conceptually, just like recognizing that the way that you think about the world, the way that your behavior is shaped and like there's a cultural relativism that you have to like put it into perspective, you know? I think it's so important to be able to be more willing to adopt a cultural relativism and like really fully try to be empathetic to the way somebody else thinks and how they were brought up and understand that in the context of where they are and what they've been through and like what they've been taught. And so I think that like I'm really happy that I've been able to do what I have been able to do here and get so much of that education because I think that it just, you know, we so rarely nowadays get to exist in isolation, you know. So I think it's really critical that we have an ability to fully understand and recognize what somebody else is going through and why. I think being here, you get an opportunity to like run into that regularly. How like to come to terms with the way that you were brought up as an American and what an American perspective looks like and how that differs from somebody else.